There is nothing wrong to do with surgery if you don't like something and accept it on yourself.
What surgery was the hardest to recover?
Oh, it's when you do like the lipo and like ab edge, like the J-plasma, because it's like the heat goes in.
What if the person you became famous for being no longer exists? Imagine logging onto social media one day, scrolling through a familiar face you have seen on your television screen for years, and suddenly stopping cold because something is completely different. The eyes are the same but everything else has shifted. The body, the confidence, the energy, the spirit, all of it transformed into something you never expected. That is exactly what has happened to some of the biggest names from the 90-Day Fiancé universe. These are not small changes. These are total reinventions. And every single one of them carries a story that goes far deeper than what you can see on the surface. Some of these journeys will inspire you. Some will surprise you. A few might even change how you think about transformation altogether. Stay with us because by the end of this, you will never look at these stars the same way again. Let us begin with a woman whose name became synonymous with boldness and controversy in equal measure. Larissa dos Santos Lima arrived in the United States from Brazil with dreams that most people could relate to: love, stability, a new beginning in a new country. She married Colt Johnson and their story played out on national television with all the friction of two very different worlds colliding at once. Back then she carried herself with a naturalness that viewers either appreciated or overlooked entirely. She was striking, yes, but in a way that felt grounded in who she genuinely was at that time in her life. Her fashion was simple. Her presence was real. And the audience was only beginning to understand the kind of woman she would eventually become. What followed over the next several years was a dramatic reinvention that nobody could have predicted. Larissa began pursuing cosmetic enhancements with a level of commitment that made headlines repeatedly. She was open about it, which was refreshing in a world where many public figures deny any work at all. She talked about procedures she had done, changes she wanted to make, and the person she was actively building herself into. The financial investment was significant and the physical results were impossible to ignore. Each change brought new conversations, new opinions, and a new version of her story that kept people watching even after she left the show entirely. Her confidence grew alongside every transformation and the public could not look away. Her relationship with Colt deteriorated under the weight of constant conflict and public pressure. Their divorce in 2019 marked the beginning of a very different chapter. She stepped away from the traditional path of reality television and leaned into building her own platform on social media. The audience she had gained through the franchise became an audience she could speak to directly, on her own terms, without producers shaping the narrative. That shift in power is something not every reality star manages to accomplish, and Larissa used it wisely. Her story is still unfolding and that might be what makes it most compelling. She is not a finished product. She is a woman in motion, constantly redefining what she wants and who she chooses to be. Now consider Colt Johnson himself, who often gets overlooked in conversations about transformation because his changes were less visually dramatic at first glance. When viewers first met him, he appeared as a quiet, somewhat reserved man navigating a relationship that seemed designed to challenge every part of his personality. He lived simply, worked steadily, and found himself suddenly at the center of one of the most talked about storylines the franchise had ever produced. The public was not always kind to him and the criticism he received was layered with judgment about his choices, his lifestyle, and the way he handled conflict under pressure. After his marriage ended, he had a decision to make, the kind of decision that everyone faces after a very public failure. He could retreat entirely or he could rebuild. He chose to rebuild, and he chose to do it through discipline. He started prioritizing physical health in a way he had not before. He changed his eating habits, developed a consistent workout routine, and over time his body responded in ways that genuinely surprised the people who thought they already knew everything about him. He became someone who looked different but more importantly felt different about himself. The confidence that came with that physical change opened emotional doors that had been closed for years. Colt's transformation is a reminder that reinvention does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it happens quietly, one decision at a time, until one day the mirror reflects back something entirely new. Yura walked into the 90-Day Fiancé world with a level of self-assurance that immediately set her apart from many of her castmates. She was stylish, direct, and visually captivating in a way that drew attention whether people intended it or not. Her relationship with Jovi Dufresne gave the show one of its more entertaining dynamic pairings, and her personality made her someone audiences remembered long after episodes ended. She did not blend into the background. She commanded it, but along with that attention came scrutiny, the kind that women in the public eye know very well. Viewers speculated about her appearance. Comments flooded in about procedures she may or may not have had done. Rather than deflecting or ignoring those conversations, Yura chose to address them with an honesty that was genuinely rare in this space. She confirmed what was true and explained her reasoning without any apology attached to it. Her position was simple and powerful: a person has every right to change what makes them unhappy about their own body, and there is no shame in choosing to do so. That transparency built a different kind of loyalty with her audience. As her fan base grew, Yura channeled that energy into something entrepreneurial. She launched a boutique, expanded into beauty and lifestyle content, and built a brand that reflected her personal aesthetic rather than borrowing from someone else's template. She became a creator and a businesswoman in addition to being a television personality, and that combination gave her a longevity that many reality stars simply never find. Darcy Silva occupies a very specific space in the 90-Day Fiancé universe. She is one of those figures who became so embedded in the franchise's identity that it is difficult to imagine the show without her presence somewhere in the background. Her emotional journey through love, heartbreak, and the search for genuine connection gave her a relatability that viewers responded to deeply. And her bond with her twin sister Stacy created one of the more unique dynamics the franchise had ever explored, eventually earning them their own spin-off series that brought a new level of attention to both women. Over the years, Darcy's appearance shifted considerably and the public noticed. She and Stacy both spoke openly about the cosmetic choices they made, framing those decisions within the context of their lives as mothers, as women navigating aging in the public eye, and as individuals trying to feel comfortable in their own skin after years of emotional turbulence. They did not pretend otherwise, and that honesty was something viewers either admired or debated loudly depending on their own perspectives. What makes Darcy's story particularly interesting is that her reinvention was never only about how she looked. She pursued business ventures, developed her personal brand, and consistently pushed herself toward projects that expressed who she was beyond the drama the show had made her famous for. She wanted to be seen as more than a heartbroken woman on a reality series, and slowly she built enough foundation to support that larger identity. And Fiza Arkhipchenko is perhaps the most dramatic reinvention story in the entire franchise, not because of cosmetic changes but because of the sheer distance between who the world thought she was and who she chose to become. Her time on the show generated enormous controversy. Her relationship with Jorge Nava was volatile and chaotic, and the perception of her character was shaped almost entirely by the most extreme moments captured on camera. People formed very strong opinions about her, and most of those opinions were not favorable. She was dismissed by many as shallow, demanding, and impossible to sympathize with. Then Jorge's legal troubles removed him from the picture entirely, and Anfisa found herself with a choice about what came next. She did not return to television. She did not chase headlines through social media drama. Instead, she walked into a gym and began a process of physical and personal transformation that nobody who watched her on 90-Day Fiancé could have anticipated. She committed to bodybuilding with a seriousness that went far beyond casual fitness interest. She trained hard, studied the science of strength and conditioning, earned certifications as a personal trainer, and eventually stepped onto competitive stages to be judged not on her relationship drama but on what her body and her discipline had built together over years of consistent effort. The contrast between public perception and reality could not have been more striking. The woman many viewers had written off as superficial turned out to be one of the most hard-working and disciplined athletes to ever come out of this franchise. People who had mocked her found themselves watching with something close to admiration. Anfisa had used the silence after her television exit to build something real, and what she built was genuinely impressive by any standard. Natalie Mordovtseva brought a kind of intensity to her storyline that was impossible to ignore. Her relationship struggles played out with raw emotion, and her reactions to conflict were almost always heightened in a way that made for compelling but sometimes difficult viewing. She was not an easy personality to settle into as a viewer, and audience opinion about her remained divided throughout her time on the show. But beneath the drama there was clearly a person trying to make sense of a very complicated situation far from home, in a relationship that carried its own unique pressures. Her attempts at reinventing herself physically did not always go the way she had hoped. She spoke candidly about procedures she regretted and the insecurity that followed when results did not match her expectations. That vulnerability was something different from the explosive energy viewers were used to seeing from her. It suggested a woman genuinely wrestling with self-image and trying to find peace. Her later focus shifted toward themes of wellness and emotional healing, which suggested she was trying to move past the identity the show had built around her personality and find something quieter and more personally meaningful. Rebecca Parrott came to the franchise with a different kind of story. She was older than many of her fellow cast members, and she wore that reality openly. The criticism she faced for her age and her choices was something many women watching could understand on a personal level because it reflected conversations happening in living rooms and comment sections everywhere. Society applies enormous pressure to women to appear young, and Rebecca navigated that pressure on a very public stage without flinching. Her decision to pursue cosmetic treatments as she approached her 50th birthday was entirely her own, and she made no effort to hide it or apologize for it. She had work done and she felt better for it. Her message to the people who criticized her choice was straightforward: she made those decisions for her own happiness, not for the approval of strangers. That attitude resonated with a significant portion of her audience, who appreciated seeing a woman over 50 unapologetically investing in herself and refusing to be defined by other people's expectations of how she should age gracefully or otherwise. Angela Deem was a force of nature on the show. She was loud and unfiltered, and she generated more memorable moments than almost anyone else in the franchise's history. But underneath all of that personality was a woman dealing with very real health concerns that were quietly affecting her quality of life. Her weight had become something that worried her, not primarily for cosmetic reasons but because she understood what it meant for her long-term health and her ability to be present in her own life and for her family. Her decision to undergo surgery and commit to a significant physical transformation was not made lightly. The results were dramatic. She lost a substantial amount of weight and paired that with additional cosmetic procedures that further changed her appearance. The new Angela that emerged from this process was noticeably different physically, but what struck people more than the visual change was the shift in how she carried herself. She seemed lighter in every sense of the word. More energetic. More confident. More ready for whatever came next. Her transformation sparked the kind of conversations that reality television is uniquely positioned to generate, about health, about self-image, about aging, and about the line between personal choice and public expectation. Paula Mayfield built her transformation quietly and consistently, which made it stand out in a franchise that tends to reward loud and dramatic stories. She came to the show as one half of a couple navigating cultural and family differences, and those early storylines defined how viewers initially saw her. But over time she began to reveal a side of herself that had little to do with relationships or drama. She was deeply interested in fitness, in discipline, in building something that belonged entirely to her own effort and dedication. She trained seriously and committed to a lifestyle that prioritized physical strength and genuine health. She earned a physique she was proud of, and she made clear to her followers that it came from real effort rather than shortcuts. That message connected powerfully with people who were trying to make real changes in their own lives and needed to see proof that consistency could deliver results. Paula became a fitness influencer and a role model for people who wanted to believe in natural transformation built from the ground up. Thais Ramone came into the franchise's orbit during a particularly transitional period in her own life, and the years that followed brought perhaps the most personal kind of transformation in this entire discussion. She became a mother, and that experience rewrote her priorities entirely. The exhaustion and emotion of postpartum life were real, and she did not hide that reality from the people following her journey online. She let the difficult moments be visible because pretending everything was perfect would have been a disservice to every woman watching who was navigating the same season of life with her own private struggles and quiet victories. That as she recovered and found her footing again, Thais began moving toward a vision of herself that was calmer, more grounded, and more intentional than anything the show had ever captured on camera. She expressed genuine interest in building a business rooted in her own aesthetic sensibility and her cultural background. She was stepping away from the identity of television personality and towards something that felt far more authentic to who she was becoming as an adult, a mother, and a woman with her own clear sense of direction. Finally, Big Ed Brown began his franchise journey as someone the internet treated primarily as a target. Jokes and memes followed him everywhere, and his most uncomfortable moments became the thing most people associated with his name.